to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the deep, devotional soul embedded within the ancient mantras of the Samaveda. You know, when we think about ancient texts, it's so easy to just picture dusty scrolls completely disconnected from our modern, everyday lives. But the Samaveda, it's fundamentally different. This is a text that takes raw sound and literally transforms it into an elevated spiritual experience. So we're going to unpack exactly how this incredible scripture acts as a blueprint for the devotional soul and how it turns music itself into the ultimate spiritual practice. To do this, we're anchoring our journey today in a really beautiful source, Dr. Rekha Vyas's translation of the Samaveda. And what makes her version so special is its foundation. It relies heavily on the ancient commentary of Sayana. Now, Sayana didn't just look at these verses through some rigid, dry, scholarly lens. He actually connected these ancient ritualistic verses directly to human life, our everyday struggles, and deep spiritual devotion. It totally bridges the gap between thousands of years ago and our spiritual journeys today. So, here is our roadmap for the explainer. First, we'll see why it's not just the Rigveda's shadow. Second, its branches and structure. Third, the praise of Agni and Indra. Fourth, Soma and the soul's purity. And finally, the message of devotion and music. Let's jump right into part one, not just the Rigveda's shadow. Look, there is a massive historical misconception that the Samaveda is merely a musical copy of the Rigveda. You'll often hear people say it's just a collection of Rigvedic mantras meant to be sung, but the source material makes it crystal clear that this is absolutely not the case. The contrast is actually striking. See, the Rigveda's recitation is based on a three-note system, Udatta, Anudatta, and Spurita. It's essentially spoken word with varied pitch. The Samaveda, on the other hand, developed an incredibly complex seven-note musical system, the Sapswara-swara. On top of that, there are about 450 mantras in the Samaveda that aren't even fully meant for singing in the traditional sense, and many verses are entirely distinct from the Rigveda. This seven-note system gave the Samaveda a completely independent identity. It literally birthed a whole new dimension of spiritual art. Moving right along to part two, branches and structure of the Samaveda. It's fascinating to look at how this vast ocean of knowledge was organized. The lineage shows an incredible oral tradition, flowing from the great Vyas down through generations. According to the Puranas, the sage Vyas first taught the Samaveda to his disciple Jaimini. From Jaimini, it passed to Sumantu, and down the line to Sukarman, who vastly expanded the text. This wasn't just rote memorization, you guys. It was the transmission of a living, breathing, devotional soul from teacher to student. And get this, the scale of that transmission was massive. According to the ancient scholar Patanjali, the Samaveda originally boasted an incredible 1,000 branches. Just imagine that for a second, 1,000 different regional and musical variations of this one spiritual text. But you know, time is a strict editor. Today, only 3 of those original 1,000 branches actually survive: the Kauthumya, the Ranayaniya, and the Jaiminiya. And within those 3 surviving branches, the text we have today contains exactly 1,865 riches, or verses. Now, while that might seem like a tiny fraction of what once existed, these 1,865 verses contain a highly concentrated, incredibly potent framework for spiritual devotion. To make sense of all these verses, the text is divided into major sections. The first one, the Purvarchika, is highly organized into these beautiful thematic chapters, which makes all this dense spiritual information so much easier to digest. It kicks off with the Agneya Parva, dedicated to Agni, the fire. Then comes the Andra Parva for Indra. The 5th chapter is the Pavamana Parva, dedicated to Soma, and it wraps up with the Aranyaka Parva, containing the forest songs. This structure isn't just random, it is a very deliberate journey for the seeker. Which brings us perfectly to part 3, the praise of Agni and Indra. Transitioning into the actual poetry itself, this verse brilliantly illustrates how the mantras treat Agni. The text literally says, "Agni, you are the priest of the sacrifice, established among humans by the gods." So Agni is not just seen as physical fire or some distant element. He's the vital messenger between humanity and the divine. He is the priest sitting right there in the human realm, carrying our offerings, our words, and our devotion upward to the heavens. The crucial point here is that in the Samaveda, invoking Agni is truly about illuminating our own inner consciousness and intellect. The verses explicitly state that humanity awakens its intellect and focuses its mind through Agni. When the reciter sings praises to the fire, they are actually asking for the fire of awareness to be lit within their own mind, guiding their devotional soul completely out of the darkness and straight toward divine truth. And similarly, when the text shifts to praising Indra, the mighty deity of thunder and storms, it uses surprisingly intimate language. The verse reads, "We invite Indra like a friend for our protection in every endeavor." It's so personal. The spiritual seeker isn't just cowering in fear before a powerful god. They are inviting a powerful, divine friend into their lives to act as a protecting companion on their spiritual journey. Let's dive into part 4, Soma, and the purity of the soul. This brings us to the very heart of this explainer. Now, on the surface, this ancient poetry is incredibly practical. It describes the physical process of preparing the sacred Soma plant, the crushing of the stalks with stones, the filtering of the juice through sheep's wool, and the pure, green liquid flowing joyfully into the kalasha, or pitcher, to be offered to the gods. Honestly, it sounds like an ancient recipe. But here is what you absolutely must take away from this. It's a metaphor. Just like the rough plant must be violently crushed, squeezed, and meticulously filtered to extract that pure, joyful juice, the human soul has to undergo a similar process. To reach a state of divine joy and to become a worthy offering to the divine, our devotional soul must be stripped of its ego, its attachments, and its impurities. The physical filtration of Soma is a direct mirror for our own internal, spiritual purification. And finally, part 5, the message of devotion and music. Pulling all of this together, the text reveals that music in the Samaveda is not merely art for art's sake. It is the absolute highest, most refined form of devotion. By taking ordinary speech, the breath we use every single day to talk and argue about mundane things, and structuring it into these 7 sacred notes, the singer elevates their very breath into a sacred, purifying offering. The act of singing becomes a meditation, a profound way for the devotional soul to physically vibrate in perfect tune with the universe. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder, directly inspired by the text. Can we make our speech as pure as the Samaveda today? In our loud, chaotic, and let's face it, often harsh modern world, how can we filter our words? How can we refine our own voices, our own daily expressions to carry that same ancient, intentional purity? Just think about the energy your words put into the world today. Are they a sacred offering? Thank you so much for exploring the devotional soul of the Samaveda with us.